So God made a farmer. In 1978, American radio broadcaster Paul Harvey used this line to start off an iconic speech to an audience of FFA members and agriculture advocates at the 51st National FFA Convention in Kansas City. Harvey spoke with a cadence you could pick out anywhere, in a tone that evoked envy. But what really set his speech apart that day were the words that he wrote and spoke. Becoming timeless, he truly brought home the message that God sent us someone to take care of this world when he could not. And even if you cannot connect to the piece in a religious way, you can still resonate with Harvey talking about the tenderness and the work ethic of the farmer, because you probably know someone in your life, a farmer, who steps up and coaches the 8-man football team when no one else will, a rancher who stops in the middle of the road to help you get your cows back in before you even know they're out, or someone who just proves that the word neighbor is more than the person who lives next door. That is a farmer. Paul Harvey defined a farmer in his So God Made a Farmer speech, a definition that is still relevant today. But Paul Harvey's 1978 farmer is becoming threadbare in 2026. In this modern time, our government is in a knee-deep cycle of sending out money to support the backbone of America. Just this year, bridge payments were released across the nation to corn, soybean, and wheat farmers primarily to compensate for their struggles in 2025 from the One Big Beautiful Bill. With this came an abundance of controversial topics, but now, in this day and age, it gives us the question: should we continue to spend $11 billion of our taxpayer money to make the wrongs right? Or is it the system that needs to change to save Paul Harvey's American farmer? America needs to reevaluate how to best support agriculture by acknowledging that our current monoculture-focused systems are failing the farmer, and that diversifying the products coming from our land and changing our consumer base will bring American agriculture forward. For starters, we have to acknowledge that our current monoculture-based systems are not beneficial nor sustainable. American agriculture relies heavily on production in the Midwest. Consider the breadbasket of the nation. Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and a few surrounding areas are home to an abundance of mollisoil soils, resulting in some of the most agriculturally productive land in the United States. And just 2 generations ago, this land was covered in diverse production. Each farmer or their neighbor grew various crops and had a range of livestock. But in 2026, that diversification is swept away, and it's corn and soybeans as far as the eye can see, which to the majority of viewpoints should be all right. After all, these exports only continue to grow. But the picture's a lot bigger than corn and beans geared for export. Studies done by the USDA have shown that in the last 5 years, the money that we're spending on our imports has gradually surpassed the money that we're gaining on our exports. With this comes our reduced exports comes the tariffs that we're imposing on a lot of our agricultural goods, sending off a lot of our big trade partners. For example, one of these losses is to Brazil in soybeans. According to the University of Illinois, in 2023, America produced 1.75 million bushels of soybeans, while Brazil, on the other hand, produced 3.5 million, causing one of our big trade partners to be lost due to both our tariffs and our underproduction. In addition to this, we can look at corn production, 45% of which is made into ethanol. The demand for ethanol is high mainly due to the subsidies that we're imposing on them. This government subsidies and payments is leading to overproduction of this product that isn't used to the same extent. And the subsidies, whether it be the bridge payments that we hear about today, or ARC, ECAP, or the SDRP, America has created a negative cycle of reliance for the producer to work with year after year. So now that we know the problems facing our industry, how do we address them? Furthermore, by understanding that American producers can rely on American consumers, we can change the game for the American ag industry. Our country was built on a foundation of local agriculture. Our third president, Thomas Jefferson, once said that agriculture is our wisest pursuit because it will in the end result in the most real wealth, good morals, and happiness. Foundation and other founding fathers' advocacy for agriculture changed America's years ahead. And 250 years later, we can see agriculture as our core foundations, especially in the local food movement. What is this? The local food movement is a major shift in where Americans want to spend their dollar. Let's think for a second. How many farm stands or farmers markets surround you? I, an average consumer, am surrounded by at least 15 different farm stands within a 20-minute drive. Farmers markets have grown at an annual rate of around 7% each year. The local food movement is growing. Why is this? American consumers want to reduce fuel costs, build connections with community members, find food that's more fresh and nutritious, and support the local economy. Instead of relying on foreign parties to support American agriculture, we can rely on our own consumers. So, what does that take? Well, it's unrealistic to think that American producers can solely feed the nation based on that farm side of the road method. So, we can take the money from subsidies and build distribution centers and packaging and processing facilities to turn our commodities into real food and products that American consumers can use. Adjusting our perspectives on our consumer base can change American ag for the better. Ultimately, American producers and Paul Harvey's American farmer is still around today. Paul Harvey ended his speech that day like this. It had to be someone who would plow deep and straight and not cut corners. Someone to seed, weed, and feed, and rake, and disc, and plow, and plant, and tie the fleece, and strain the milk, and replenish the self-feeder, and finish a hard week's work with a 5-mile drive to church. Someone who would bail a family together with the soft, strong bonds of sharing, who would laugh, and then sigh, with smiling eyes, when his son says he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does. So God made a farmer. So America, let's support the farmer that seeds, weeds, and feeds and breeds. And by reevaluating how to best support American agriculture, changing the flaws in our system, we can save both the farm and the table. Thank you.
Great job, Adelaide. And oh, I sound better. I'm sorry about those sound difficulties. Hopefully the crew, don't worry about that. We could hear you. Just a quick question. Obviously, we were talking about that solution of keeping things local and trying to provide farmers and ranchers that local marketing opportunity. And I know you're talking about agriculture as a whole across the United States, but here in Montana, we're kind of dry and arid, and wheat and barley are really good crops here. And we only have about 1 million people here in the state of Montana, and we produce between 7 and 12 billion loaves of bread. How do we work to really grow that what people are buying locally when we only have 1 million people here in Montana? And are you advocating for ending exports of agricultural goods entirely, or are those exports still important as well?
So to address the first part of your question, I believe that when it comes to supporting Montana agriculture and supporting the local Montana consumers, you have to look at what those consumers are desiring. And American consumers, and especially Montana consumers, want those Montana products. So whether it be the wheat turned into like wheat from Wheat Montana, or barley into malt barley that we can use, taking those Montana products and turning them into something that Montanans can use is deeply beneficial. One example of this would be using that subsidy money to further development in other stages of crop production and of food production. Whether it be vertically integrating an operation, like taking some of that cattle and making a slaughterhouse too, or whether it be making a grain mill near a part where there's a lot of wheat. These actions can result in much good wealth for both the producer and the consumer. And to address the second part of your question with exports, I believe that exports are important, but this extreme focus that our government has on exports is not not supporting the producer. American producers want to sell their goods and to feel that satisfaction of being an important part of their community. It's shown in science that this satisfaction is integral to a farmer's relationship with the community. Sending it off to a grain mill does not have the same effect as being a part of your community. So, with this, exports are important, but the community aspect is something that we can focus on even more. Thank you.
Hi, hopefully this works. Okay, great job. This is kind of a follow-up to that last question. Are there any examples of programs that support local food systems, either nationally or specifically in Montana?
Yeah, so when I see this, I see a lot of individual operations. With, um, when I mentioned the vertically integrated operations, there's a new processing facility linked to a ranch in Billings. I myself focus on processing pigs as well as raising them. So this vertical integration, especially at an individual level, is beneficial. There's lots of different ways to utilize foundation funds and American Farmers Organization funds that can deeply be beneficial to this. Montana Farmers Union, for example, has the goal of bringing back local traditional agriculture. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
So, since you mentioned a lot about supporting your local farmer, I'm right here. I'm in the second row, straight ahead of you. Right here.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So, since you mentioned supporting the local farmer, how do you think local farmers and their businesses can better promote their products to the locals in the community?
Yes, so with this, there's a lot of different ways that you can promote your business, especially at that local level. Utilizing the modern tools like social media and media outreach through online can be deeply beneficial. I believe that getting yourself out there when it comes to the local and healthy market, because there's that target audience. There's people all across our state and all across our nation that are looking to eat local and to eat healthy, because those two go hand in hand. Now, finding those target audiences maybe through social media, through newspapers, through outreach that way can be deeply beneficial to an organization. Partnering with other organizations so that you can bring out your product and just elevating it a little bit. Maybe through vertical integration, maybe through targeting that specific audience in your advertisements and channels can be deeply beneficial to the success of an agribusiness. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker will be Savannah Nelson with her speech entitled The Importance of Prescribing Burning and How It Affects Our Rangeland.
It is imperative that we acknowledge and restore fire as a necessary part of our natural systems. This is a quote by Matt Greavy of the Nature Conservancy. Prescribed burning is the controlled application of fire by a team of fire experts to restore health to ecosystems that are dependent on fire. Wildfires are natural ecological processes. Before we started managing wildfires, they abated the advancement of conifer expansion. The lack of fire has resulted in conifer encroachment and is causing multiple resource concerns across the western United States. Conifer encroachment is the invasion of coniferous trees into previously treeless areas, regions like the Great Plains or sagebrush-stepped ecosystems. The primary trees causing conifer encroachment are the Rocky Mountain juniper and the Douglas fir. Conifer encroachment decreases the necessary water quantity and quality needed for growing grasses and forbs. This leads to degraded ecosystems and changing plant communities. Coniferous trees also outcompete desirable perennial grasses and shrubs, leaving less available forage for our livestock. This reduction in perennial grass cover contributes to increased soil erosion issues. Soil erosion leads to noxious weed infestations and competition from undesirable grasses. At a national level, conifer encroachment is significantly impacting the Great Plains. I reached out to Sean Claffey, the conservation coordinator of the Southwest Montana Sagebrush Partnership, to further my knowledge on this topic. He provided me with multiple resources on conifer encroachment, one of which was a study published by Working Lands for Wildlife, which states that in 2019, the Great Plains lost $323 million in forage losses. This is equivalent to 37.3 million round bales. That is enough round bales to circle the entire globe 1.4 times. This is also the yearly forage need of 4.7 million cows. Montana alone has lost 300,000 tons of forage production since 2019. This is an economic loss of $7.5 million and enough yearly forage to feed 62,669 cows. As an example, rangelands in southwest Montana have seen an overgrowth of conifer encroachment of 50 to 70%. Madeline Mason with NRCS has collected data from the Southeast Medicine Lodge Valley study area. The study area is approximately 2,000 acres. In the last 30 years, this study area has lost 282 tons of forage production, or 470 round bales. This is an equivalent to a loss of $10,000. In the next 30 years, this study area is predicted to lose 5.7 thousand tons of forage production, or 9.5 thousand round bales. This is an equivalent to a loss of $207,000. The predicted losses for the next 30 years are 36 times higher than our current losses. That's a lot of money. This example shows us how rapidly conifers expand and their significant economical impacts on our future rangelands. Treatments for conifer encroachment include fire and mechanical treatments. Fire is most effective at relatively high, cool, moist elevations. In southwest Montana, it has been shown that prescribed burning is most effective at elevations above 6,800 feet in mountain big sage and three-tip sagebrush. Prescribed burning is a treatment that can last 50 or more years. Land managers also believe that low-intensity burns can actually make systems more resilient to the influx of invasives like cheatgrass. Meanwhile, mechanical treatments like the use of chainsaws will only last 25 years. This occurs because mechanical treatments cannot remove seeds already embedded in the soil, and small saplings are often missed. However, treatment for this growing issue becomes increasingly more expensive as the severity of conifer encroachment rises. A low severity level of conifer encroachment would be considered young coniferous trees lightly scattered across the landscape, whereas a high severity level of conifer encroachment would be considered a young coniferous forest lacking perennial grass cover. Treatment of low severity conifer encroachment costs $50 to $80 per acre. In contrast, treatment of high severity conifer encroachment costs $450 to $1,000 per acre. This example not only shows us that conifer encroachment is costing the US, Montana, and our ranchers money as time goes by, but it's also becoming an increasingly more expensive and harder issue to fix. Conifer encroachment is severely impacting the longevity of our ranches and natural ecosystems. Rangelands disappearing into forests is creating less available forage for our livestock. The thick tree cover reduces the amount of sunlight that can reach low-growing vegetation. This causes native sagebrush and grasses to wither, leaving behind dead, dry brush, increasing fuel loadings. When a wildfire does inevitably start, these increased fuel loadings will turn into high-intensity burns. High-intensity burns have significant impacts on soil productivity, limiting forage rejuvenation. Another example of a negative impact conifer encroachment has is the brewer's sparrow. Conifer encroachment of sagebrush habitat in southwest Montana has led to a 30% decline in the brewer's sparrow population since 1954. If nothing is done to prevent conifer encroachment, the brewer's sparrow population will decline by another 30% within the next 30 years. Defending core sagebrush habitat will maintain the brewer's sparrow population. The Southwest Montana Partnership alone has cut 60,000 acres of rangeland in Beaverhead and Madison counties. They are aiding ranchers in extending the longevity of their operations. Treatments like these will not only protect our rangeland ecosystems, but also the agricultural economy of Montana. It is imperative that we restore fire as a natural ecological process for the restoration of our rangelands. The time to treat your land is now. Thank you. Do the judges have any questions?
Hello. My one question is, how can local or state governments support prescribed burns?
Could you repeat that one more time?
How can local or state governments support prescribed burns?
So local and state governments, they can create more educational opportunities for ranchers to learn about these prescribed burns and allow ranchers to understand the significant economical impacts that conifer encroachment can have on their ranches, especially for future generations. And then they can work with the ranchers to import treatment on their lands.
Hi. Is there any sagebrush or other grass varieties that could be negatively impacted by fire, and how were those evaluated by experts on if the landscape is truly fit for a prescribed burn?
So for the most part, the sagebrush is what we're mostly concerned about, and obviously the grasses. But the sagebrush actually rejuvenate very well from the prescribed burns and come up like 10 years quicker before the trees will. So this will actually help our natural ecosystems and our rangeland.
Hi, I have another question. Do you see a need for increased like fire personnel to help with prescribed burns, or is it something that ranchers can do on their own?
So there's multiple ways ranchers can try and get their land treated. The first way is they can apply for a burning permit through their county. These burns typically are larger and more complex to remove like vast sums of conifer encroachment, and the liability with fire can be concerning for our ranchers. So if they feel like worried about conducting a burn on their own, they can always hire contractors to burn their land. This will be a more expensive option for them. And another way is they can work with their federal and state governments to treat their land. An example is the Wyden Authority, which states that if you have land adjacent to federal property, then they can treat your land if it benefits their federal entity, and this will be at little to no cost to the rancher. But the federal governments normally say that you should have like a backup plan just in case you lose the fire. So having more personnel on standby to reduce the risk of a wildfire actually starting is a great idea.
I have a quick question for you. So how do you think we can better educate our farmers, like our local farmers, about the benefits of these prescribed burns?
So that's a great question. You can have multiple talks that inviting farmers to understand how large of an issue this is and how economically this can impact their ranches, especially for their future generations. I know Sean Claffey does a really good job at talking to ranchers and getting them to understand these significant impacts. I think one of the greatest ways is to show them the charts and the numbers of how much the US and just local study areas are losing over small increments of time. And another great thing is they've got pictures that show land from 30 years ago that used to be like sagebrush covered, beautiful rangelands that's now turned into forests with a ton of fuel loadings. So the best way I would say to go about this is just making farmers more aware, having more talks, having more social media posts, having more opportunities for people to become aware of this issue. Thank you.
All right. Our next speaker is Shalise Stone with her speech entitled Impacts of Social Media in the Agricultural Community.
It's August of 2025. I'm in the harvest field, driving the grain cart, listening to my favorite podcast called Discover Ag by Tara Vander Dussen and Natalie Kaverick, preparing for National Creed Speaking. I'm listening, taking notes on the issues in agriculture throughout the United States when my heart just stopped. I played back the last minute of the podcast again and again before just pausing it completely. Discover Ag had just played an example reel, and I was speechless as the speaker voiced their concerns for the grass-fed beef labels. In that reel, he argued that grass-fed beef labels are a lie, and while his argument was compelling, his thoughts and points were very disconnected, making the whole clip seem quite misleading to the general population. That episode of Discover Ag made me very aware that social media has the potential to misinform the general population and negatively impact agriculture. Social media undoubtedly influences our culture today, and it has changed since the pandemic. We're now all expected to be on social media, but especially the younger generations, and some spend much more time on it than they should. My concern is that since social media is such an impactful source of information, people are going to start believing everything they see instead of checking the facts. Part of my concern is that people are going to use artificial intelligence, or AI, to change the perspective of others. Because we can use AI to create pictures or videos of any reality we perceive to be true. And whether intentional or not, this can misrepresent agriculture, which is an already misunderstood industry. That reel that Discover Ag was exposing changed my whole perspective on how truly important it is that we educate the public on the real facts in agriculture. In my experience, the average consumer doesn't know very much about farming and ranching, which can make it easy to be misled, which can lead to consumer decisions that further negatively impact agriculture. There are also people and organizations out there like PETA that will take something that we do in agriculture, put a bad caption on it, and make it look negative for the rest of the population. An example of this is an Instagram reel by the account Vegan FTA, who took a video of dairy cows wearing hobbles and put the caption, "Is a glass of milk really worth this?" making it seem that dairy farmers are treating these animals inhumanely and not letting them walk freely, when in truth, they are actually helping the animals stay healthier, because hobbles are A, very beneficial to the dairy industry, and B, dairy cows don't wear them all the time. Another example of people misrepresenting agriculture on social media is a reel by the account The Save Movement, who used AI to create a video about dairy calves being taken away from their mothers. They put it to sad music and used a voiceover to represent the calf, explaining how sad it is when not with its mother. However, they failed to mention how dairy cows don't have the best motherly instincts and will often accidentally injure or completely abandon the calf. Dairy farm Hegler Creek Farms makes it their mission to clear up ideas such as these. In a reel, they explain that dairy cows aren't great mothers and often don't give the calves the nutrients that they need to survive. And by separating the calf away from its mother, they are giving it a much better chance at life. As agriculturists who make up 1.3% of the US population, we have always had problems when it comes to educating the public on the real facts in agriculture. According to the American Feed Industry Association, 72% of consumers know little to nothing about farming and ranching, as quoted by Tara Vander Dussen, with only 28% of US consumers having some knowledge about agriculture. We need to use social media to our benefit and help create a positive viewpoint for agriculture. But how has social media been affecting American agriculture as an industry? For generations, families have dedicated their lives to the American agricultural industry to ensure that we not only have a future for our country, but a future for our world. This is part of our identity as agriculturists, but we are now witnessing a cultural shift towards uninformed criticism. This is demoralizing to those in the ag industry, making it harder to get out of bed in the morning, harder to continue to go work with those stubborn cows, or to continue to be in the harvest field for 15 hours a day. Eventually, these toils start to take a toll on your mental health. Farmers and ranchers in the United States are 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide than the rest of the general population. And no doubt, the negativity spread through social media is a high contributing factor of that. We need to be, as E.M. Tiffany says, progressive agriculturists, which means we need to use social media as the tool that it is and help explain the true meaning behind American agriculture. The agricultural community is like a family. We all share similar values, beliefs, and passions, and when we see someone on social media criticizing agriculture, it doesn't just affect that one person, industry, or state. It affects all of us. We need to be innovative, educate the public, and support each other. We need to do things like Matt Boucher from Dwight, Illinois, who is a farmer who has grown to have over 9,500 followers over all of his social media platforms. In an interview, he said, "I want to explain what we are doing on the farm in a way that people not from a farming background can understand. I want to bridge the gap between those in agriculture and those that live in the city." Boucher makes sure there is no editing or polishing to the videos portraying agriculture in real life, which builds a better relationship between us and the consumer. Another person on social media is the Iowa dairy farmer who takes comments from previous reels that try to make him look bad and explains them in these reels, explaining the situation and clearing things up for others. Someone I personally love seeing on social media is our Montana FFA state president, Claire Mernon, who has the account 365 Days of Agriculture, which she uses as a way to, as she says, share the world of agriculture every single day. She often posts fun facts about what's happening in agriculture in her life and on her farm, showing it off and highlighting the positives of it to the world. Social media, when improperly used, has the potential to misinform the general population and negatively impact agriculture. So we in agriculture need to help clear up those misconceptions. We need to be that voice for all of those in the ag industry and help make a positive difference for the future of agriculture. We need to engage with those on social media that are misrepresenting agriculture and be willing to have those tough conversations. Thomas Jefferson once said, "Agriculture is our wisest pursuit because it will, in the end, contribute to most: real wealth, good morals, and happiness." I want to help people understand this amazing lifestyle of agriculture that we call our own. Thank you.
Great job, thank you. My question is, how do you think we can clear up misconceptions to people that might be in urban areas that are so disconnected that they're not following agriculture accounts or like coming upon agriculturalists just like in their day-to-day life? How do you think we can clear up misconceptions to those people?
I think one of the most important things that we can do in agriculture is first reach out to the public. The public, the consumers, our society is what builds the future of agriculture. And when we can be on the same page as everyone that we are producing for, we will build a better future for agriculture. Some of the best ways that we can do this is if we see someone on social media making a comment that shows that they are not understanding the true reason behind something that we do in agriculture, such as the hobbles that we use in the dairy industry. If we can build up the courage and be able to encourage others in the ag industry to get on social media, their personal social medias, and help DM those people or to connect with those people. I know a lot of people in my home and community that are try and reach out to as many people personally in our community to help clear up those conceptions, but also reaching out on our personal social medias and talking to them personally and explaining the situation. We know that no matter what we say, there are some people that won't believe it, and we also have to come at an attitude that we know that, and be kind and respectful, but still try and create a positive impact and explain what is happening truly to that person that is misunderstanding.
Great job. This is kind of a follow-up to that. How can agricultural organizations help to prevent misinformation about farming practices?
That's a great question. So something that I know a lot of agriculture organizations in our community do, specifically Farmers Union and Farm Bureau do, they go out and they have conventions where they talk to people. They have trainings that they offer to newer farmers, along with posting on their personal social medias fun facts about agriculture, or something that oftentimes they will post about something that people are misunderstanding, such as dairy cows being taken away from their mothers, or not understanding why we decide to use beef and turn it into hamburger. And when we are able to use that and post about that and inform the people, advocate for agriculture, such as these organizations do, and be able to explain that to the public, those are ways that those organizations specifically do help clear up those misconceptions and educate the public on those facts.
Should all farmers and ranchers be on social media, or are there some that should just stay away?
I believe that everyone has potential to make an impact, especially since social media impacts our lives and society greatly today. I think it is really important that we encourage people to be on social media. I know there are a lot of people out there that are going to be uncomfortable being on social media or don't feel like they can do it, and I think that's something that we as agriculturists need to support, but also being able to explain to them that it's okay if they're afraid, and it's okay if they don't want to, as long as they know that if they ever see someone who is misrepresenting agriculture or misunderstanding something, when they take the opportunity to reach out and clear that misconception up, I feel like that is the best way that we can combat that. However, like I said, people are always going to be scared to be on social media, and so it's not for everyone, but I believe that we can encourage most people to do it.
What are your suggestions to farmers and ranchers on social media that share a post that is from another farmer or rancher that has misinformation? And how do you curb that knee-jerk reaction to share a post that has misinformation because your neighbor shared it?
That's a really great question. So, as I said earlier, I listen to the Discover Ag podcast, and oftentimes in there, they will explain if someone, someone in agriculture that's posting something, if they post something that is misunderstood or doesn't make a lot of sense, they often take the time to explain that and clear that up for others. They explain it on their podcast. They talk about what they might have gotten wrong or misunderstood, or potentially representing agriculture. Like you said, if they post something that's not potentially correct, not often do people post something to intentionally hurt agriculture, but it does happen, and when we can reach out to people. Is that time? Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you so much.
Our final speaker is Charlie Shaw with her speech entitled Regenerative Agriculture, Rebranding or Reimagining American Agriculture.
Are the judges ready? Come take a trip with me to a dot in the middle of nowhere. A small town that lives off the highway marked by a single yellow light. The mountain range that sticks out of the valley forms a natural barrier around the town. We call them the bulls. Generations of farmers have used this area as a place to gather their cattle. The summers are warm, often hitting the hundreds, and the winters are cold and frigid at a negative 45 degrees. Welcome to Roundup, Montana. Cattle ranching and coal mining have been at the root of our history for years. But that story often gets lost in the reality of run-down buildings and boarded-up windows dotting structures along the streets. They're harsh reminders of the struggles that hit Roundup after the railroad left. Within the last few years, an effort has been made to rebrand the town. From the welcome sign to the town center to the marketing efforts on Main Street, people have begun to reimagine Roundup. As a part of this small community, we've heard a lot recently of the new term regenerative agriculture. And it begs the question, is regenerative agriculture simply a rebranding of the sustainable practices agriculturists have been using for years? Or reimagining the future of American agriculture? As we dive into this topic, you might be asking, what is regenerative agriculture? According to the Natural Resource Defense Council, regenerative agriculture is described as a philosophy and approach to land management. Regenerative agriculture asks us to think about how all aspects of agriculture are connected through a web, a network of entities who grow, enhance, exchange, distribute, and consume goods and services instead of a linear supply chain. Its main priority is to address ways to create better nutrition opportunities for both consumers and the soil. But unlike organic agriculture, no strict certification requirements for regenerative agriculture exist. So, who's advocating for this new trend in agriculture? With this new trend coming to light, many organizations and parties have been advocating for regenerative agriculture. Organizations like American Farmland Trust, Regeneration International, Kiss the Ground, and National Farmers Union are focused on the efforts to advance the conservation of agriculture and farmland. Also, America's not the only area looking towards regenerative agricultural practices. Canada, Africa, Australia, China, and Latin America are a few areas around the world instilling these practices as well. But what are the benefits? As we study how it affects soil health, we find that there are several practices that reap benefits to soil health. No-till is mentioned frequently because it increases soil organic matter, biological activity, improves water retention, and reduces soil erosion. Another practice that can often be associated with regenerative ag is adaptive multi-paddock grazing, or AMP. This is the action of methodically using portable fencing systems to graze livestock. It allows the grass to regrow in previously grazed spaces, while the livestock are still able to access grazing land. It can even be used to manage invasive weeds in crop fields. You may have even done this at home with a chicken run. Another implementation that's often used in regenerative ag is the planting of perennial species, such as ryegrass or switchgrass, to renew soil health. Perennial species are often used in soil husbandry because they don't need to be replanted every year, causing them to reduce the need for tilling. Research has shown that because perennial species don't need to be replanted annually, they provide a stable environment for arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, helping reduce soil disturbance. Regular tilling for annual crop production causes disruptions in the dirt and removes a large amount of the essential organic matter and bacteria in the soil that is crucial for thriving mycorrhizal networks, releasing carbon dioxide into the air. Now, let's acknowledge some alternative viewpoints. Some people are opposed to regenerative ag for different reasons. The first concern is cost. Often, when a farmer changes his or her practice, it requires an investment in new equipment.
For example, if a farmer begins to practice no-till, over time there can be a natural compaction caused by lack of movement in the soil. Farmers have to invest in equipment that permeates the soil to place the seed without causing unnecessary soil disruption. However, several statistics show that farmers actually have increased profits due to lower input costs when practicing no-till. There are also several government and private programs that financially assist farmers transitioning into regenerative farming. Another concern is that practices such as no-till and crop rotation can decrease crop yields. Statistics argue that regenerative fields yield a 28% lower grain production, but 78% higher profits. Statistics also argue that in a timeline, crop yields may initially decrease a small amount due to going through a transition period, but over time, yields can not only return to equilibrium, but can even improve. If a farmer were to use nitrogen fertilizer in the first few years of field management transition, then the initial drop in crop yield would decrease. Research shows there's even been evidence that in drought years, regenerative fields have outperformed conventional fields due to better water retention. But the most significant alternative viewpoint discussed is the question, why do we need to find a new way to practice agriculture? This question is something that I myself struggle with. Some argue that regenerative farming is a brand new type of production agriculture. Others believe that it's simply a rebranding of the practices already implemented. I believe that our mission should be to embrace past traditions and acknowledge them while adjusting our methods to continue to produce in the future. The future of production agriculture relies on our ability to continue to produce on fertile and healthy land. While regenerative agriculture does pose a few new ideas into the production agricultural realm, these concepts are not new. Farmers have been using these practices for years, oftentimes without even knowing it. Adaptive multi-paddock grazing is a regenerative practice that has been used for many years. The Montana Improved Grazing Project is an organization that pushes for the investment in adaptive multi-paddock grazing. And this project began in 2017. My grandfather has been producing food for several years and even owned his own garlic business called Montana Garlic. When I'd asked him if he'd ever used crop rotation within his company, he said that he'd been doing this for years to reduce disease among the plants and improve soil health. In closing, sometimes our greatest struggle gives us the opportunity to reimagine and rebrand. Our small town roundup is not only rebranding, but also reimagining what we could be. The boba shop in town is a new favorite attraction, and surveys keep popping up to decide how we should use the rundown, boarded-up buildings along Main Street. And like our small town, regenerative ag is adapting to new ways to thrive in the future. As agriculturists who support a large global consumer base, we must embrace traditions while looking towards a future in regenerative agriculture. Thank you.
You mentioned, great job. You mentioned obviously the cost, whether it's new equipment or different grazing methods and fencing, whatever it might be. Are there any new or current funding through USDA or other entities that farmers, ranchers, and landowners could explore?
The interesting thing that I have found through my research in this project, when talking to my local NRCS office, is that there are several grants through only that office alone that provide financial assistance to farmers. I actually got the paperwork for it and I looked through it a little bit. If a farmer were to simply walk into the office and address one of the professionals saying, "I need help," they not only will provide them with the application for financial assistance, but also help them walking through how to fill that out. And that's just in the NRCS office. The USDA is another government program that financially assists farmers all across America looking towards implementing regenerative ag. Kiss the Ground is a private program that financially assists farmers transitioning into regenerative ag as well. The education and funding for regenerative ag is abundant as long as we're looking for it.
Great job.
Thank you.
My question for you is how can we better educate the more traditional farmers or those who are more opposed to like regenerative ag on the benefits of it or how it can benefit their farm?
I think this is one of the most essential topics when we're talking about implementing regenerative ag. Because if I'm a producer who's been using time-tested tools for years that not only make a profit for my family, but also feed the communities around me, why would I change what I'm doing at the concern of a loss in production? But the education side to this is so essential because what we must understand is in keeping an open mind, we can, yes, there is a small drop in the first 3 to 5 years for yields, but that drop can be managed with nitrogen. In turn, after that small period, farmers will see, on average, a 10 to 20% increase with their production. Most farmers seeing up to a 30% increase. Education like this is so important to providing not only for our new farmers who are just getting into production agriculture, but also to traditional people who have used time-tested tools years after years. This isn't the concern of what a better practice is. This is the concern of how are we feeding our people in a constantly growing population with constant struggle in where we get our inputs such as fertilizer, diesel, synthetic herbicides, and pesticides, as well as limited viable cropland, foreign adversaries constantly buying farmland in America, and the struggle of simply producing. Educating farmers that have been producing for years is the most essential aspect to adapting regenerative agriculture across America.
Okay, kind of a piggyback to that question. So these farmers who are a bit more opposed to it, or the traditional farmers, how do you kind of get them on board to your idea, like you mentioned, of incorporating past farming methods while also acknowledging the new and upcoming advancements that we have in regenerative ag?
The one thing I think is so important when talking to people who are opposed to regenerative ag is asking them what practices they use on their farm. Because most of the time, a large majority of these farmers are already using regenerative practices, but because there's no strict certification like label for it, it gets to be a struggle for them to actually identify as regenerative farmers. In my town of Muscle County, there is a large amount of farmers in this area, and most of them are more traditional farmers that have been planting for years using conventional farming tools. But if you talk to them, most of them say, yeah, I've been implementing no-till for years because that's what works best in this environment. We have a silty, sand-like soil texture that makes it hard for soil to actually build roots and be strong and sustainable. Implementing no-till in this area allows us to be able to better grow our crops where there is sand and soil, as well as it makes it easier for us to produce when there's areas like rocky areas where we can't grow our food. I think the other most essential part of educating people who are opposed to regenerative ag is simply being open-minded and addressing the fact that conventional agriculture is in no way incorrect. It's tools that we have been using for years. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
We are now going to transition back into delegate business. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll of members?
I will go down the list of chapters. When you hear your chapter name called, please have a representative from your chapter stand up and announce your chapter name and how many delegates you have currently seated, loud and clear. If you have a chapter member on the way that has yet to arrive, please do not include them in your count. Only announce members who are currently present. We will begin with Bainville, Baker, Beaverhead, Belfry, Belgrade, Belt, Bighorn, Big Sandy, Big Timber, Billings, Broadus, Broadview, Broadwater, Browning, Carter County, Cascade, Chinook, Shoto, CJI, Clarks Fork. Thank you, that was really loud, appreciate it. Colstrip, Columbus,